Said when she was crowned, coronations are a declaration of our hopes.
Nobody saw it coming. One moment, one conversation. And everything inside Windsor changed forever. Prince William does not lose his temper easily. But something Tom Parker Bowles did pushed him completely over the edge. The palace has not been the same since. The man nobody talks about. Tom Parker Bowles does not get talked about enough, and that, in itself, is part of the problem. When the world discusses Camilla's place in the royal family, the conversation almost always centers on Camilla herself, her relationship with Charles, her long road to public acceptance, her title, her position, her future. Tom and his sister, Laura Parker Bowles, exist in the margins of that conversation, occasionally referenced, rarely examined closely, and almost never discussed in terms of the specific and complicated role they play inside a family that did not choose them and has never fully known what to do with them. That is a mistake, because Tom Parker Bowles is not a marginal figure in this story. He is a central one, and understanding who he is, where he comes from, and how he has navigated the extraordinary circumstances of his mother's life is essential to understanding what happened at Windsor. Thomas Henry Charles Parker Bowles was born on the 18th of December in the year 1974. He is Camilla's firstborn child, the product of her marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, a British Army officer whom Camilla married in 1973. The marriage produced 2 children, Tom and his younger sister Laura, before ending in divorce in 1995, the same year the full extent of Charles and Camilla's relationship became publicly known through the release of the now infamous recorded phone call that the British press descended on with barely contained glee. Tom was 20 years old when his parents divorced, old enough to understand what was happening, old enough to feel the full weight of public scrutiny that descended on his family in those years. The British press was not kind to Camilla in the mid-1990s. The public was not kind to Camilla, and by extension, the world Tom Parker Bowles was growing up in was one in which his mother's name was synonymous, in the minds of millions of people, with betrayal and heartbreak and the destruction of the most famous marriage in the world. That shapes a person. It has to. Tom has spoken in interviews over the years about those years with a candor that is unusual for someone in his position. He has described the difficulty of watching his mother become a public villain. He has described the protectiveness he felt toward her. He has described the particular pain of seeing someone you love reduced in the public imagination to a single defining act that erases everything else about them. These are not the words of a man who processed that period easily or quickly. They are the words of someone who carries it still. He built his own life in the years that followed, and it is a genuinely interesting life, which is part of what makes him a more complicated figure than his peripheral royal adjacent status might suggest. Tom Parker Bowles became a food writer, a serious one, not a celebrity who dabbles in food columns, but a genuinely respected critic and author whose work has been published in serious outlets and whose books have received serious attention from people who know the field. He has written about food with a depth and a personal investment that suggest a man who found in the pleasures of the table something genuine and sustaining in years when other things were less stable. He is charming in person, funny, self-deprecating in the way that people from his particular English background learn early and deploy often. He has his mother's social ease and his father's military bearing softened considerably by years of living a life that is more Notting Hill restaurant than Buckingham Palace corridor. He is not a stiff man. He is not a formal man. And that, as it turns out, is precisely where the trouble begins, because the royal family, and Windsor Castle specifically, runs on formality, on protocol, on the understanding that certain spaces carry certain expectations, and that the people moving through those spaces are expected to understand and observe those expectations without being told. This is not written down anywhere in a document that gets handed to you at the door. It is absorbed, it is learned. It is the invisible grammar of the institution, and you either speak it fluently or you do not. Tom Parker Bowles does not speak it fluently. He never has. And the people inside Windsor who have watched him move through royal spaces over the years have noted, in private conversations that eventually find their way outward, that he has a habit of treating those spaces with a casualness that makes certain members of the family deeply uncomfortable. William is one of those members. the relationship between William and Tom has never been publicly characterized as hostile. There have been no reported confrontations, no leaked stories of tension, no unnamed sources describing friction between the Prince of Wales and his step-grandmother's son. The surface has always been maintained, the courtesies have always been observed, but surface and reality are two different things inside this family. And the reality, according to people familiar with both men, is that William has never been entirely comfortable with Tom's presence in the spaces that William considers his own. The reasons for that discomfort go deeper than personality. They go all the way back to Diana, to what Tom's mother represented in Diana's life and death, to a history that William has never fully made his peace with, regardless of what the public appearances suggest. That history did not stay buried at Windsor. It came to the surface, suddenly, dramatically, in a way that nobody in the room was prepared for. What happened at Windsor? Windsor Castle is not a home in the way most people understand that word. It is the oldest and largest occupied castle in the world. It has been a royal residence for almost 1,000 years. Its walls have absorbed centuries of ceremony, of grief, of private drama played out behind doors that the public never gets to see behind. It is a place where the weight of history is present in every room, where the expectations of the institution press down on everyone who moves through it, and where the rules, spoken and unspoken, are older than anyone currently alive to enforce them. It is not a place where you make scenes. It is not a place where you forget yourself. And it is absolutely not a place where you push Prince William past his limit. Tom Parker Bowles did all three. The incident that sources close to the situation have described took place in the early part of 2024. The specific date has not been publicly confirmed, and the palace has maintained its customary silence on the matter entirely. But the broad shape of what happened has filtered outward through the channels that palace-adjacent information always eventually travels. And the picture it paints is of an evening that began with the usual social formalities of Windsor, and ended with William saying words to Tom Parker Bowles that nobody in that room expected to hear. To understand what happened, you need to understand the context first. The gathering in question was a private family occasion, not a state event, not a public ceremony. A private evening at Windsor involving a small number of people from the immediate royal circle and, by virtue of his mother's position, Tom Parker Bowles. These kinds of occasions happen with some regularity. They are not formally structured in the way that official royal events are. They are, by design, more relaxed, more personal. The idea is that the family can breathe in these settings in a way that the constant formality of public royal life does not permit. Tom arrived in the way that people who are comfortable in social settings tend to arrive, confidently, with the ease of someone who has been in these rooms before and who does not feel the need to modify himself significantly for the environment. That ease in a different context would be an asset. In Windsor, on this particular evening, it became a problem almost immediately. The accounts of what followed vary slightly in their details depending on the source, but the consistent thread running through all of them is this. Tom's behavior during the course of the evening crossed a line, not in a single dramatic moment, in the way that these things usually happen, gradually, through accumulation of moments that individually might have been managed, but that collectively became impossible to ignore. There was, according to people familiar with what happened, an issue involving alcohol. Tom Parker Bowles has never made a secret of the fact that he enjoys the pleasures of a good evening. He writes about food and drink professionally. He is, by his own description, someone who approaches the table with genuine enthusiasm. In the right setting, with the right company, that is a charming quality. At Windsor, on this particular evening, it became something else. His behavior became louder as the evening progressed, more expansive, less attuned to the particular register that Windsor demands from everyone inside it. William noticed. He had been noticing for a while. But it was what happened next that changed everything. The specific details of what Tom said or did in the moments immediately before William's response have not been fully reported. Sources have been deliberately vague on this point, in the way that sources are vague when the specific detail is either too sensitive or too damaging to put into plain language. What has been communicated clearly and consistently is that Tom crossed a line that was personal rather than merely procedural. That what happened touched something in William that goes far deeper than questions of Windsor etiquette or appropriate behavior at a private family gathering. Some sources have suggested that the issue involved a comment, something said in the loosened atmosphere of the evening that landed badly, very badly. Others have suggested that the issue was behavioral in a broader sense, a pattern of conduct throughout the evening that finally reached a point where William felt he had no choice but to respond directly. What all sources agree on is the response itself. William told Tom to leave. Not quietly, not in the carefully managed, diplomatically phrased language that royal family members use when they want to communicate displeasure without creating a scene. Directly, firmly. With a clarity that left no room for misinterpretation and no possibility of the moment being smoothed over with a polite change of subject. The room went still. These things do not happen at Windsor. People do not get asked to leave. The institution absorbs awkward moments, manages difficult people, smooths over uncomfortable evenings with the practiced ease of an organization that has been doing exactly that for centuries. The fact that William did not reach for any of those tools, that he bypassed the institutional instinct entirely and responded from somewhere much more personal and much more raw, tells you everything about the state of things between these two men. Tom left, and the silence he left behind in that room has been reverberating through the family ever since. William's breaking point. Nobody gets to that point overnight. That is the thing people miss when they focus on the incident itself. They look at the moment William told Tom to leave, and they ask what Tom did that evening to provoke it. That is the wrong question. The right question is not what happened that night. The right question is what has been building for years that made that night the one where everything finally gave way. Because William's reaction to Tom Parker Bowles at Windsor was not about Tom Parker Bowles at Windsor. Not really. It was about something much older and much deeper than one uncomfortable evening in a castle. It was about a wound that has never fully closed, a history that has never been fully processed, a name that sits at the center of William's life like a fault line that everyone around him knows is there, and nobody ever talks about directly. That name is Diana. To understand William's breaking point, you have to go back to what it meant to be Diana's son. Not in the abstract symbolic sense that the public tends to reach for when they talk about William's relationship with his mother's memory, in the specific lived daily sense of what the childhood actually was. William was born on the 21st of June in the year 1982. He was 7 years old when his parents formally separated in 1989. He was 10 when the separation became public in 1992, in the most brutal and public way imaginable. He was 15 when his mother died in a tunnel in Paris on the 31st of August in the year 1997. 15 years old, and the world expected him to walk behind her coffin. He did it. He walked. He kept his face composed in front of hundreds of millions of people watching around the world. He was 15 years old, and he performed a grief that most adults would not have been able to contain in public, with a dignity that broke the hearts of everyone watching. And then he went back inside the institution that had shaped his entire life, and he kept going, because that is what this family does. You keep going. You do not stop. You do not fall apart in public. You carry it, and you keep moving. But carrying something is not the same as resolving it. William has spoken carefully about his mother over the years. He has spoken about grief and about the importance of mental health, and about the particular difficulty of losing a parent at a young age in circumstances as public and as traumatic as the ones he experienced. He has done this thoughtfully and with genuine openness that has earned him real public respect. But there is a difference between speaking about grief in general terms and fully making peace with the specific people and specific circumstances that sit at the center of it. Camilla sits at the center of it, not Camilla as she is now. Not Camilla the queen consort, the woman who has spent 20 years building a relationship with Charles's sons that is, by all public accounts, functional, and at times, genuinely warm. William has been photographed with Camilla at public events. He has spoken about her with what appears to be measured acceptance. The surface relationship exists, and it is maintained. But surface and interior are two different things. And the interior of William's relationship with everything Camilla represents has never been fully reconciled with the public performance of acceptance. Tom Parker Bowles is the most visible extension of that unresolved history. Every time Tom is present in a royal space, his presence is a reminder, not of anything Tom himself did. Tom was a young man navigating his own impossible circumstances during those years. He did not choose his mother's choices. He did not choose the role his family played in the most painful chapter of William's life. But he carries that history in his name and in his face and in the simple fact of his existence as Camilla's son. And for William, who has spent his entire adult life managing the gap between what he feels privately and what the institution requires him to perform publicly, that presence is a pressure that accumulates. It accumulated for years. People familiar with William's inner circle describe a man who is considerably less forgiving in private than his public image suggests. Not in a vindictive way, not in a way that drives active hostility towards specific people on a daily basis, but in the way of someone who has a long memory and a precise sense of what he considers acceptable in the spaces he considers his own. Windsor is one of those spaces. It is deeply personal to William in a way that goes beyond its constitutional significance. It is where he has chosen to raise his family. It is where his children are growing up. It is, in the most meaningful sense of the word, his home. Having Tom Parker Bowles in that home, behaving in a way that William found disrespectful of the space and of the occasion, in an evening that should have been contained and private, was the specific combination of factors that broke through every carefully maintained boundary William had constructed. The institution said, absorb it. William said no. That no had been building for a very long time. And once it came out, there was no mechanism inside this family for putting it quietly back. Camilla was in the room when it happened, and what it cost her personally is the part of the story that has been least examined and most felt. Camilla caught in the middle. There is no good position to be in when your son and your husband's heir are in the same room, and everything falls apart. There is no script for that moment. There is no protocol that tells you what to do when the two most important relationships in your life collide in a way that forces you to choose between them in real time, in front of people, in a space where everything you do is going to be remembered and repeated and analyzed afterward. There is no graceful exit from that situation. There is only damage limitation, and even that has its limits. Camilla was present when William told Tom to leave. Let that sit for a moment, because the significance of that detail cannot be overstated. This was not something that happened in a distant room that she heard about afterward. This was not a second-hand account delivered to her by a staff member the following morning. She was there. She witnessed her son being told to leave Windsor by the man who will one day be king. She watched it happen, and she had to decide in real time what her face was going to do and what her body was going to do and what, if anything, she was going to say. People who were present have described her reaction in careful and limited terms. What comes through consistently is a woman who went very still. Not the stillness of someone who is calm, the stillness of someone who is working extremely hard to contain something that, if released, would make an already catastrophic situation considerably worse. Camilla has spent 30 years learning how to be still in public under pressure. She deployed every bit of that skill in that moment. She did not intervene directly. She did not challenge William. She did not raise her voice or attempt to de-escalate the confrontation in a way that would have required her to place herself visibly between her son and the Prince of Wales. To do any of those things would have been to make a choice in public that she could not take back, a choice about whose side she was on. And making that choice publicly, in that room, in that moment, was something she understood instinctively she could not afford to do. So, she stayed still, and Tom left. And the room recalibrated around the silence he left behind. What happened after is where it gets complicated, because Camilla had to go home that night, back to Charles, back to the man who is both her husband and William's father, and therefore the only person in the world who sits at the intersection of both relationships simultaneously. Charles was not present when the incident occurred. The accounts of when and how he was informed vary, but he was informed. And the conversation that followed between Charles and Camilla, behind closed doors and away from every set of ears that would eventually transmit the details outward, is one that nobody has been able to fully reconstruct from the outside. What is known is what came after it. Camilla did not publicly address the incident. She has not spoken about it in any interview or public setting. No statement was issued. No source close to her was deployed to manage the narrative in the way that royal adjacent sources are sometimes deployed when damage control is required. The silence was total, and it was deliberate. Camilla understands, better than almost anyone in this family, that some fires get bigger when you pour words on them. This was a fire she chose to starve of oxygen entirely. But silence and resolution are two different things. The position Camilla now occupies inside the royal family is one of the most genuinely difficult positions any woman in her situation has ever been asked to hold. She is queen consort. She is Charles's wife. She has spent decades building a place in this institution that was never going to be easy and that required sacrifices most people will never fully understand. She has done that work, she has paid that price, and she has arrived at a point where her formal position is secure and her personal position is anything but. Because Tom is her son. He is her firstborn child. He was there through every difficult year of her life. He watched her be vilified by a public that had decided who she was and was not interested in revising that judgment. He protected her when she needed protecting, and he stayed loyal when loyalty was costly. The bond between them is not a casual one. It is forged from some of the hardest years either of them has lived through. And he was just thrown out of Windsor by the man she needs to maintain a functional relationship with for the rest of her life. There is no version of that situation that does not cost Camilla something real. If she defends Tom too visibly, she positions herself against William in a way that has serious long-term consequences for her standing inside the institution. If she distances herself from Tom to preserve her relationship with William and with the palace, she betrays a loyalty that runs deeper than any title or any institutional calculation. She is caught, genuinely and completely caught, between the son who has always been there and the stepson who will one day be king. That is the impossible position Camilla is sitting in right now, and the people watching from inside the palace know it. Some of them are sympathetic, some of them are not. The ones who are not are the ones we need to talk about next. The Windsor Divide. Every royal household has its fault lines. That is not a scandal, it is a fact of institutional life. When you gather enough people under one roof, people with different histories and different loyalties and different ideas about how things should work, you get divisions, you get camps, you get the quiet, persistent friction of competing interests operating in close proximity over long periods of time. The British royal family has always had these divisions. What changes over time is where the lines are drawn and how deep they run. Right now, the deepest line runs between two camps. On one side is William, the Prince of Wales, the future king, the man who carries Diana's memory like a second skin, and who has spent his entire adult life navigating the gap between what the institution asks of him and what his own history has made him. His camp is not large in terms of numbers, but it is the camp that holds the future, his staff, his loyalists, the people inside the palace who have attached their professional and personal fortunes to the direction William is heading. These are people who think in decades, who understand that the next chapter of the monarchy belongs to William and Catherine, and who are watching the present moment with that future firmly in mind. On the other side is Camilla, not Charles, Camilla, because Charles occupies a position that is above the fray in ways that make him a difficult figure to place cleanly in either camp. He loves William. He loves Camilla. He is caught between them in his own way, a way that is different from Camilla's impossible position, but no less uncomfortable. The Camilla camp is made up of her personal staff, her long-standing social circle, the people who came into the royal household with her, and whose loyalties are tied to her rather than to the institution more broadly. These are people who feel, with some justification, that Camilla has never been fully accepted by certain parts of the family, and the incident at Windsor confirmed every suspicion they had been carrying quietly for years. The incident did not create this divide. That is the important thing to understand. It revealed it. These two camps have been operating in parallel inside the royal household for years, managing the overlap, maintaining the necessary courtesies, performing the unity that the institution requires in public, while privately navigating a set of tensions that have never been resolved and were never going to be resolved simply by being ignored long enough. The Windsor incident was the moment those tensions became impossible to keep entirely below the surface, and the people on both sides of the divide responded in ways that reflected exactly where their loyalties sat. William's camp said nothing publicly. They did not need to. The story was already out. The details were already filtering through the channels that these details always travel, and the broad shape of what happened, a scene at Windsor in which William told Camilla's son to leave, was not a story that required any additional commentary from people in William's corner. It spoke for itself, and it spoke in a language that everyone inside the institution understood perfectly. Camilla's camp was less quiet. Sources close to Camilla began communicating, carefully and through intermediaries, a version of events that positioned Tom's behavior as less egregious than the reaction it provoked. The suggestion, threaded through several conversations that found their way into royal media coverage in the months following the incident, was that William's response was disproportionate, that the evening had been uncomfortable, yes, but that the level of William's reaction said more about William's unresolved feelings than it did about anything Tom had actually done. This is a familiar move in royal media management. You do not attack the person directly. You raise questions about their judgment. You suggest that the reaction reveals something about the reactor. You let the implication do the work that a direct accusation cannot safely do. It did not work particularly well, because the people in William's camp are not unsophisticated operators. They understood exactly what was being attempted, and the response, communicated through their own channels with equal care, was to allow the focus to remain on Tom's behavior, rather than on William's reaction to it. The effect of this parallel briefing operation was to deepen the divide rather than paper over it. Both camps talking. Neither camp talking to each other. The gap between them widening with every conversation that went outward instead of inward. The staff inside Windsor felt it immediately. Royal households run on atmosphere. The people who work inside these spaces are acutely sensitive to the temperature of the relationships around them, because their daily working lives depend on being able to read those temperatures accurately. When the atmosphere inside a royal household shifts, the staff know it before anyone says a word. And the atmosphere inside Windsor shifted after that evening, in a way that several people who work there have described, in carefully indirect terms, as significant. The word used most often is tension. But the way it is used suggests something heavier than that word usually carries. There is one more dimension to this divide that has not been fully examined publicly. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has been largely absent from the public narrative around this incident, which is itself significant. Catherine and Tom Parker Bowles are not close. They have never been close. Their worlds do not naturally overlap, and their temperaments do not naturally align. Catherine is precise, controlled, and deeply protective of the boundaries around her family and her home. Tom is expansive, socially fluid, and comfortable in a way that does not always read as respectful of those boundaries to the people maintaining them. Catherine did not need to say a word after Windsor. Her silence was its own statement, and everyone inside that household heard it perfectly clearly. What happens next? The dust has not settled, not even close. That is the thing about incidents like this one, inside the royal family. They do not resolve cleanly. They do not reach a moment where everyone sits down, has a difficult conversation, and arrives at an understanding that allows things to move forward. That is not how this institution works. What happens instead is that the incident gets absorbed into the permanent architecture of the family's internal relationships, where it sits quietly, shaping everything around it without ever being directly acknowledged. The Windsor incident is now part of that architecture, and it is going to stay there. The immediate practical question is the simplest one. What happens to Tom Parker Bowles' access to royal spaces going forward? Because access inside this family is not a neutral thing. It is a statement. Who is welcomed into which rooms and on which occasions communicates something precise about their standing in the eyes of the people who control those spaces. William controls Windsor in a way that is deeply personal. The idea that Tom will simply return to those rooms as though nothing happened is not a realistic reading of the situation, but the alternative creates its own problem. If Tom's access to royal spaces is visibly reduced, the absence will be noticed. Royal watchers notice everything. The press notices everything. And an unexplained reduction in Tom's visibility at royal events will generate exactly the kind of questions the palace is least equipped to answer honestly. You cannot explain it without explaining what caused it. And explaining what caused it means putting the Windsor incident on the record in a way that nobody in the family wants. So, the palace is caught in its own trap. Acknowledge nothing. Explain nothing. Hope that time does the work that honesty cannot safely do. It might work, and it has worked before, But there is a variable that makes the usual tools less reliable, and that variable is Charles. Charles is the only person in this family whose relationship with both William and Camilla gives him the standing to address what happened directly. He is William's father. He is Camilla's husband. He is Tom's stepfather. He sits at the center of every relationship this incident has damaged. And the question of what Charles does with that position is the question that will determine how this plays out. People familiar with Charles's way of operating do not express great confidence in the brokering option. Charles is not a confronter. He is a man who communicates through distance and intermediaries. He loves both William and Camilla genuinely. But love and effective conflict resolution are two different things entirely. And when the people he loves are in conflict with each other, his instinct has always been to hope it resolves itself rather than insert himself directly into the resolution. That instinct is going to be tested in ways it has not been tested before. And then there is the longer question, the one that refuses to go away. What does this mean for the monarchy William is going to lead? Because the incident at Windsor offered a glimpse of something important. William is not going to perform a tolerance he does not feel indefinitely. He has a line. When that line is crossed, he responds from somewhere real rather than somewhere managed. Tom Parker Bowles went home from Windsor that night, but the question he left behind in that room is still sitting there, unanswered. How much of the past is William willing to carry into the future? Nobody knows the answer yet, not even William. If this story revealed something about the royal family you did not expect, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe so you never miss what we uncover next. And tell us this. Do you think William went too far? Or did Tom Parker Bowles finally push the wrong person past the wrong limit?